In today's video, I will be ranking every weapon and type soul from worst to best. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe, since only about 20% of the people watching right now are actually subscribed. And also, I'm live on Twitch right now playing the new Elden Ring DLC, so go check me out over there. And also, I will be releasing a new song cover for YouTube members only soon. So buy a YouTube membership for song covers that I made in the past and will be making in the future. Now let's get into it. First of all, there's a few weapons I won't be ranking. This is mostly Hakata weapons because there isn't much variety, and also Hakata weapons can't really stand up to swords and stuff in the game because they're fundamentally different in their use cases, scenarios, and the way that they work. So Hakata weapons mostly won't be getting ranked, but I will be ranking all 4 Shunko variants. What I won't be ranking are the Grimmjow Claws, Songdu Claws, or Warden, because they're fundamentally different, as I said, and you don't really have much of a choice in the case of like Arankars who only get the Grimmjow Claws for Hakata. I will also be ranking all of the Yamato variants separately, and also, by the way, the clip playing right now is the most hype I've ever been in a ranked match, because this guy is really good, and he had like a 40-4 win-loss rate. And I added on to that. I'm just the best player in the world. Anyway, starting at number 33 is going to be Nelio's Lance. This weapon just isn't good. The M1 swing speed is on the slower side, and the crit is just a little Sero Firefly type projectile. Surprisingly, it used to be worse when the crit was a Bala projectile instead of a Sero Firefly, but it's still the worst weapon in the game easily because it's a crit that can't guard break and it's a mediocre projectile. At 32, we have the Soul Reaper Greatsword, and this weapon just sucks. The M1 swing speed is so slow, and the crit's only upside is that it sends people slightly into the air, so it can actually combo into Sonata Flow. But that's not saying much when Sonata Flow combos into almost everything in the entire game. The crit while doing this is also really slow and easy to parry, so it's barely even worth going for. But if you do manage it, at least you can land Sonata Flow. You know, like every other move and weapon and crit in the game can't already do that. At 31, we have the Soul Reaper Hammer. It's nearly identical to the Greatsword in its performance, so these were really close, but the Hammer actually has the benefit of the crit ragdolling, which makes it very slightly easier to land moves after hitting the crit in comparison to the Greatsword. So it is technically slightly better, but it's still not good. At 30, we have the Twin Blade. It's just not good at anything, but at the very least it isn't as slow as the last 3 entries, making it somewhat better, even if it's basically just a mediocre stock option with no upsides. At 29 is the Schwert weapon. This weapon has better M1s and everything before it, but just a quick question for the Quincy's watching this video right now. Do you press tab on your keyboard and use the arrow M1s? If yes, then the crit on this weapon is useless, because it's a slightly buffed one of those and you already have 5 that you're consistently using, so why would you need a 6th one to replace your crit? And if no, then the crit on this weapon is useless because you don't use the arrows anyway. Why ruin your crit by replacing it with one of the arrows that you don't use already? It's just not worth using in either scenario. The Schwert sucks. And honestly, I would have placed it lower, but this is a community ranking with votes, so, you know, I guess I can't. At number 28, we have the Baragon's Axe. This weapon used to be really good, but ever since the devs committed to removing everything with Frame 1 Hyper Armor, the only really useful part of this weapon was completely destroyed. It used to be amazing for escaping combos, but at this point, it's kind of just a mediocre weapon, which isn't worth using since its best quality was pretty much gutted, and its defensive option, being the crit, isn't even usable defensively anymore. So you could get a better weapon that has, you know, better swing speed, better crit speed, better everything than Baragon's Axe. At 27, we have the recently buffed Quincy Glock. This weapon just has never really been that great at much. Fast M1s is all it really has overall right now, and the crits aren't even really that good at being used as evasives because they got nerfed a while back, so it's just not a very good weapon, and the crits can't really follow up into anything because the aerial crit launches you up into the air, meaning you're not going to be close enough to hit people with anything. At 26, we have the Caliber. This weapon's not awful, but since the crit doesn't guard break and the aerial crit is no longer a free AoE combo escape, it's just not very good anymore. It used to be really good when you used to be able to hop up into the air for a free AoE combo escape on the ground, or if you're in the middle of an aerial Hakata combo, just press R on your keyboard as fast as you can, and then escape any combo like that. But right now, it's just really not good. So the only thing the Caliber has is M1 range. At 25, we have Noitora's Scythe, which I don't really like the ranking of this weapon. It is a good weapon, and I think every weapon past this point is very viable, but some are just better than others for small little advantages they have. But Noitora's Scythe is a good weapon despite its seemingly low ranking, because the crit cripples and allows you to just, you know, hit your opponent while they can't do anything for about 4 seconds, which is really strong if you can land the crit, and the crit moves, which makes it all that much much better. At 24, we have the dual swords, and I know a lot of people use these, but can we be real? The only reason any of you use them is because they're a dual wield weapon and you think it looks cool. They're not bad, they're just kind of mid. The M1's good, the crit's a bit underwhelming, it's kind of like the dagger crit but a little bit slower. It's just an okay weapon, but it's pretty good for a common. In the 23rd spot, we have the Jugram shield. This weapon is hyper specific in its usage because it is only synergizing with balance. Balance is good, but this weapon literally only has users because it helps with your building order stacks faster. Without balance, this weapon drops like all of the spots almost into like number 30 maybe, but the Jugram shield is actually pretty good with balance, and it's great on support builds because now you're getting stacks to heal your teammates even faster. At 22, we have the Blood Edge. Now, first of all, does anyone still use this? And anyway, let's just get into the weapon. The weapon's alright. The crit is a good fast guard break and potential combo extender, and the particles make it hard for opponents to see your next move, so it's overall pretty good. Especially because you can crit and then try and do something like Sonata Flow out of it. And not only is it good because it's hard to see the Sonata Flow coming, but the absolute aura emanated off of that combo is crazy. As you push away the purple smoke to reveal nothing but your sword, and then boom, you just like slash your opponent. That's like the most cinematic thing in this entire game. In the 21st spot is the Flame Shunko. This thing kind of just sucks. It's easily the worst Shunko, and it lacks the distance closing tools and combo ability that other Shunkos have, since its crit sends people flying too far for you to actually follow up with anything, making it really only a combo ender, and that's not even that good of one because it can be parried pretty easily. It also does less damage than any other of the Shunkos, and the damage that it does over ice isn't made up for by the loss of utility. At 20, we have the Hollow Burden. This weapon is so mid. It lost its mythical status and was demoted to legendary because of how mid it was. It's basically just a buff to the Noitora's Scythe because they pretty much act the same and have similar interactions. The only difference is Hollow Burden is faster and has a segmented crit, so it's slightly better, bringing it up a few spots. In the 19th spot, we have the Katana. The Katana is the starter weapon for Soul Reapers and most people, and it's kind of just absolutely middle of the road. It has a decent crit, decent M1 range, decent speed, decent stun. Everything about it is just decent, so it's like halfway up our list, which is funny because I consider it absolutely better than most of the things lower than it. Not all of them. I think Noitora's Scythe could have been brought up, but whatever. You guys ranked this, not me. And by you guys, I mean most of the testers. You get what I mean. Anyway, at number 18, we have the Wundervi sword. This sword would be absolutely garbage if it weren't for the True Pierce crit. The M1 speed is slower than most of the swords of its size, but in exchange, the crit does a True Pierce that does percentage-based true damage. Of course, it's less than actual True Pierce with vertical down and split gate, which do like a bar, but it's still true damage, which is always a viable asset because it's consistent. At 17, we have the Soul Reaper Scythe, and I actually really like this weapon, and it is easily my favorite common in the game. The crit is a great combo extender that pulls people in, and I personally really like this weapon. It just gets severely outclassed by later weapons, which truly upsets me, honestly. In the 16th spot is Antithesis. This weapon's pretty decent. The crit is pretty good damage, and the M1 speed is slightly above average. And once the Antithesis Shrift comes out, it'll probably get a good buff. Also, the crit combos into, you guessed it, Sonata Flow, like every other move in this stupid game. But anyway, at number 15, we have the Ice Shunko. This used to be really good and the best Shunko before Lightning Shunko came out. Back when the aerial crit comboed well and when the ground crit bypassed all evasives and blocks and stopped people from flash stepping. But now it's a mediocre combo extender and a mediocre combo starter, and neither of them are really worth using when Thunder and Wind Shunko exist. At 14, we have the Hollowbell Dagger. This weapon was recently reworked like a month ago, and ever since its rework, it's actually been really good. The range crits are super good pressure tools that can't be punished, and the M1 speed is obviously really fast because it's a dagger. Also, it is super easy to crit, and then like the second part of the ranged ball laser crit just hits people even if they dodge, which is just like a free bit of damage or free pressure. It's really good. At 13, we have the Normal Dagger. I do not approve of this rating because I fucking hate the dagger so much. This weapon, I hate it. This weapon used to be super good, but then they nerfed the swing delay and the crit's just not that good because it's slow and super visible because it has a dumbass looking animation that's easy to read. And I mean, it's stupid. It's probably the worst animation in the entire game. I hate the dagger crit. This weapon just really isn't great anymore, but it's still not that bad, so I can't put it any lower when people, you know, rated this. It used to be super good when the M1s would escape pocket of combos, but now there's no reason you should ever use it ever. At 12, we have the Killgate Rapier. The crit can be used both range or close because it comes out fast, and the fact that it applies jailing is really good because jailing people and disabling their entire kit for a few seconds is obviously very good. And then on top of that, it guard breaks and it's fast and it's hard to parry most of the time. It's a really good weapon. I love the Killgate Rapier. I think it's very underrated. At number 11, we have the Ulquiorra Katana. This weapon has been restored to its former glory since it got rebuffed to guard break again. It is very good now. The crit has a great hitbox, and the movement aspect of it makes it hard to parry and makes it a really good pressure tool as a whole. The katana M1s are usually just pretty good. This weapon is great, but it's kind of like a diet longsword in the fact that it is just worse than longsword in every way. That being said, if longsword were nerfed to the point where it was as good as Ulquiorra Katana, it would still be as good as a nerfed longsword. So Ulquiorra Katana is still pretty good. Starting out at the top 10, we have the Reaconteur variant of the Yamato weapon. It is easily the worst variant when compared to the other two for a few reasons. First of all, the crit is 2 hits, so it gives the least soul style, and second of all, it has no combo potential because it launches people too far for anything else to land. I also think it's funny, but the Yamato weapon, just in case you don't know, is a reference to Sephiroth from Final Fantasy. Anyway, at number 9, we have the Odachi. This weapon's pretty good for a lot of reasons. The segmented crit means that you can miss time and mix up your opponents, and then on top of that, it still has a lot of stun, meaning you can follow up with combos at the end of your crit if you can land it. It also just has the coolest looking crit VFX in the game in my opinion. I don't know what it is about it, but it just looks really cool. And our A spot is the Piety, which, did anyone get baited by the Sephiroth Yamato comment? I hope so. If you left a comment saying that it's not from that, leave it down below. Wallow in your shame. Anyway, the Piety is in the 8th spot. This weapon gets extra points for being a reference to Moog, the Lord of Incest from Elden Ring, but it's also just a good weapon. The range crit was crazy in testing, but even now it's still very good, and just having a range pressure tool that doesn't overwrite your crit like some of the bad weapons in the lower tiers, I'm talking about the Schwert, that weapon sucks, is just really good. The Hyper Armor main crit is also really good and can be used to combo into moves like Eviscerate or Sonata Flow if you like do a little short dash, but why wouldn't it combo into Sonata Flow? Everything does that. At number 7 is the Wenshunko. The crit on this thing is amazing. It's basically the katana crit mixed with Shori. It's a katana crit, but it's faster, and landing it brings people up into the air for an aerial Hakata combo. This thing is very good and is the only Shunko variant other than Lightning which hasn't been severely nerfed out of placement. However, I still wouldn't really recommend using it just because Hakata is in a terrible spot right now, which, oh my god, I feel like ranting about this. I'm a speed player. Some people still get confused and call me a Hakata player because they see the claws. I use 15 Hakata, and I use 1 Hakata move from the entire set, okay? Hakata was never as overpowered as so many of you think it was. You might think it is because you can't parry, but Hakata was never that good. So I don't want to hear people saying it was broken, and I hated hearing people say it was broken, because it really wasn't that good. Sure, it was strong in 1v1s, but it was bad in ganks, and even in 1v1s, if you knew how to parry, it wasn't that strong. Regardless, just outside of our top 5 at number 6 is the Longsword. This weapon has always been within the top 5 and was only bumped out by broken weapons like the ones after this, which is ironic considering the new Vice Quincy mythical weapon. Regardless, the Longsword is amazing. It has dagger swing speed, a ranged guard break and crit with a weird delayed hitbox that makes it hard to parry consistently, has good range, and it's just overall really good. I love this weapon. Imagine if Ulquiorra Katana were super buffed, and that's the Longsword. And number 5 is the Spalton. This weapon was briefly like bottom 5 when the crit didn't guard break and did no posture damage, but since it was rebuffed, it's still extremely good, and Fast Fang as a crit that also combos into Fast Fang was not a good idea, but it's kind of too hard to nerf without gutting it, so this weapon might just need a rework. Regardless, it barely takes the top 5, but we all hate this weapon and understand why it's up here, because it's just good. The Quincy Yamato variant is taking our number 4 spot. This weapon was actually at one point seen as the worst of the 3 Yamato variants, but then people realized 2 things. First of all, this builds up insane Soul Style since its crit is a multi-hit, which also steals a ton of Reiatsu because of Soul Style. But also, the crit is just Flash Fang with a reskin. And Flash Fang, as we all know, is super good. The new, and I mean very new, like it literally came out yesterday, Vice weapon, which made me have to re-record this video, is coming in our number 3 spot. The 3 different crits are actually insane. You have a pressure tool that teleports you, making it hard to punish, that also procs shadows, giving you a follow-up ability. You get a crit that's just a massive AoE around you, and AoEs are all, they're just always good. And you get a crit that's basically a teleport that carries people with making it super easy to follow up from it, without even using a shadow proc. This weapon is insane, and honestly, I'm afraid to rank it so high because it's gonna get nerfed in like a week, especially because the swing speed is like the pre-nerf Yamato, and the Yamato swing speed just got nerfed, which I've been telling the devs to standardize swing speeds, but you know, they're not listening. Anyway, Lightning Shunko is taking our number 2 spot. I don't really think I have to explain why. Everyone knows Lightning Shunko is good. Fast teleporting crit that can't be punished and does good damage. And it doesn't really matter that it can't follow up well because it's spammable, and Hakata has things like Shori and Gehenna for starting up combos. So, you know, Lightning Shunko is just really good. I actually don't even know if Lightning Shunko has an aerial version of the crit. I'm assuming it does, but for the fact that Hakata is just not good right now, it's so hard to say, because I have not been hit with a Hakata aerial combo in probably over a month. Next up is the Soul Reaper Yamato variant, which is going to be placed as the current best weapon in the entire game. Even after the Yamato swing speed nerf, it's still not really that important because that's not why the weapon was good. Sure, Yamato swing speed is an important factor, but they didn't nerf it that much, and the best part about this weapon is the crit anyway. The Soul Reaper Yamato crit has more hits than the Quincy variant, making it give more soul style and Reiatsu. On top of that, it has way more range, is super fast, and can be thrown out at basically any time, and it can only be punished with projectiles since the AoE of the crit is way larger than it looks. This is undisputably the best weapon in the game right now with scant few contenders. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. Big shoutouts to YouTube members Kenix, Rayant, Jake, Cyberboy21, and Drizzy Drake Fan. Your song will be soon. To the rest of you, I love you all, and I hope you all have an amazing day, and goodbye.